Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the PGA Draft Cast, brought to you by WinDailySports.com. Just a quick reminder that Win Daily Sports doesn't just cover golf. They cover the NFL, the NHL, MLB, NBA, soccer, MMA, NASCAR, you name the sport. Win Daily Sports has projection models, optimizers, articles, and our famous Discord chat to cover it all. Now, if you click the promo link below and you type in Win Big or Green, you will get 1 week free of Win Daily. And then after that, it is just $5.99 per week for all of that, including some of our betting content. Now, let's get to the PGA Draft Cast, where we have proven track records with Joel, Spencer, David, and myself. Let's have some fun. Get in the chat. Make sure you subscribe to the page, and make sure you hit the like button. Let's do this snake draft. Let's do the PGA Draft Cast. Let's do it right now.
PGA Nation, we are back. We are back with another fun week ahead. We are in full swing. The tournaments, no more of these JV fields, right? A non-elevated event. The guys are coming to play, coming off a major. Guys are still showing up. I'm excited. See, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I mean, it's a little JV-ish, but I don't mind that at all. I mean, it's funny, Joel, after a major, we heard this after the Masters. It's like, oh man, we got to trudge on and do DFS and bet and golf. It's like, are we really having this conversation? This is super fun. Every Monday is like when the NCAA March Madness brackets come out, like on Selection Sunday. Every Monday is that for all of us or anybody that loves playing DFS golf. I got to tell you though, Joel, nobody loves DFS golf as much as you do right now. $150,000 on Sunday. Showdown lineup. You are the Showdown King. And I got to say, for all you Win Daily Sports members, Joel was in there the night before, Saturday night. In our golf bets tab, he dropped in his player pool and boom, what was it, 12 hours later, maybe 14 hours later, he's winning for $150K. I got to tell you, Joel, I didn't tail your picks. I had sort of my own picks. I think I put them in our Win Daily Discord as well, but I'm kind of wishing, granted, I was only going to play one or two lineups, but I'm kind of wishing I went your way because you absolutely drilled it. This has got to be in Showdown your sixth or seventh six-figure win, I'm guessing.
Ooh, if 50K plus, it's above that, but I don't think it's quite that many for a six-figure. But it is my biggest win ever. So take that into account. For me, it was a huge day. I was just telling the guys before we got on. And actually, realistically, Hovland's putt on 18 cost me it should have been 180, and that birdie putt on 18. Now, I'm not going to be greedy. I'm very happy with how it turned out, but it could have been even bigger. So, but it was a lot of fun. I'll even add one more small tidbit. Because the price for entry was a little bit higher, there was like a coin flip of me not playing because I was like, it's a lot weirder entry, and I was like, I normally won't play as much as I do because of the higher entry. So I was kind of like, yeah, maybe I'll take this weekend off. But I decided I wasn't doing anything. I was watching a movie with my wife. I was like, I'm going to build the lineups out. If I like it, I play. If I don't, I don't. That's how it's going to go. Obviously, I liked it and I played it. It all worked out. But it could have easily not happened. So thankfully, it worked in my favor. Spence, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Congratulations, Joel. I think it's going to be the honor you part of the show to begin this. And I'll give a little bit of behind the scenes thing that nobody gets to see before we do this. So, Joel comes walking in. He has money flying out of his pocket here. It's just a lot of money being won on this show, specifically from Joel right now. So congratulations on that. And any single time that, I'll use Jason Day as an example here. When you earn more money than the player that's actually in the major and that player earns zero and you're winning over six figures there, very impressive stuff, man.
Well, thank you. And I will say, including everyone in the chat, because we draft with you guys too, even though I'm on the show, obviously, I use the show too, right? Your guys' plays and tips, and as we go through, helps me to kind of get prepared for the week. So if you're not watching weekly, you can see we win a lot. And it's not just me. I mean, everyone. Sia wins a ton, David a ton, Spencer a ton. So tune in, get on the board, on the train with us. And have some fun. There's still a lot of the season left to go. David, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Again, massive congratulations on the huge hit last week. We're just saying before the show that, as Joel mentioned in that Discord, we were dropping our plays. I posted DFS core with my showdown plays and my week-long DFS plays. And funnily enough, this week on round 4, where Joel had his massive 150k hit, my DFS call was the same that featured in both of his lineups, which was Cantlay, Kitayama, Davis. Kitayama and Davis both had Koepka, Kitayama, Davis. Kitayama and Davis both had the lowest round of the day on the Sunday, and then Koepka obviously got the win, and that's always a great recipe for success in your round 4 showdowns. So awesome hit. Just another huge 6-figure win for Joel, as we see kind of on a regular basis now. As I said in the chat, he spent at least half of that on his haircut, but I understand that the other half is going to his wife, so we can all be very happy for that.
Yes, I appreciate that, fellas. It was a good week. We only need to spend a minute recapping the PGA before we dive forward to the Charles Schwab Challenge down in Texas this week. I think it's a really interesting field because I think, Sia, you made a good point from saying it's like almost a JV tournament. It feels that way. It's interesting because there's more than like 2 guys or 3 guys at the top. There is 6, 7, 8 guys at the top, but then there's this you kind of miss the middle period. Like what we were used to in the low 9K, 8K range is now kind of disappeared. And that's where this tournaments are changing. But this type of thing for DFS purposes is critical because understanding how to best form a lineup that can be competitive is part of the equation. And with salary cap and everything like that, and us trying to show you how we can do it on the show, obviously we're a little handicapped on the show because we're drafting against each other, so we can't take all our optimal plays. But that's a huge factor each week, week in, week out. Like majors play way differently than regular week-to-week tournaments because the fields are so loaded that there is more value players to be had lower down, whereas tournaments like this, that's going to look a lot different. With that being said, of course, every week we give you the very best course breakdown you're going to find in the industry to say what you're looking for at Colonial. Spence, hit us. What are you looking for here this week on the course?
So we have Colonial Country Club, 7,209 yards. We'll talk about that yardage in a second. Par 70 bent grass greens. Colonial is one of the shortest courses on the PGA Tour. That factor would typically generate what you would expect to be a birdie fest output, especially considering that the track has been known to play 200 yards less than that number that I just read off a second ago. However, I do think that you can quickly start to realize that length isn't what technically makes a venue problematic. When you look into Colonial consistently grading as one of the more problematic challenges on tour yearly, I don't know if we're necessarily going to get that single digit sort of number that's come into play when there's been worse weather here. I think you probably land somewhere in that 15 under to 20 under if you're really pushing this for birdies at the end of the day. But even still, I mean, that's a slightly more challenging stop than one of these tournaments that's going to be a 25 under sort of a shootout. You have tree line fairways, forced layups that are going to stop second shots if drives do go wayward. I think that's one of the reasons just from the very beginning of that answer why you get a significant decrease in importance for distance. When I ran my model, it's not as if accuracy necessarily got a massive jump either. For me, and I'd be curious to hear what you guys thought, it's kind of one of those pitch and putt contests with the way I ran my model. So there's a couple of key answers based off of that reason. I think one, you get smaller than average greens. That's going to accentuate the yearly increase that the field experiences with their flat stick. 6.2% more shots get made from 10 to 25 feet than average. And then 2, it adds an intriguing facet when you build a model because there's also a 4.1% increase in dispersion of scoring for strokes gain approach that is taking place on average. The majority of that's going to come between 125 to 200 yards. That's going to be where the big increase takes place there. It's a massive decrease that you see from 200 yards plus. It's the forced layups that really is the big answer there. But I mean, at the end of the day, for me, this just kind of comes down to the pitch and putt contest that I talked about. And I think there's ways that you can get around it when you build a model. I wouldn't say that's like the only thing you want to look at is approach numbers and putting numbers, but there are ways that you can build this where you can make this a really unique setup for a tournament that is highly predictive in rollover success year to year with it. So I kind of tried to build a model that wouldn't land on the same answer as everybody else. I see concentrated ownership in a lot of the same ranges. I think when you get tournaments like this, you need to find ways to get unique. So I guess we can talk about some of that when we get into the players, but it's going to be a fun tournament.
Love it. Did Joel freeze? Either that or this is some sort of performance. Anybody ever
Joel forgot to pay his bills even after winning $150,000.
Yeah, that reminds me that The stance he's in right now. Do y'all remember the show before we get to our board? We're going to bring that up in a second. America's Best Dance Crew and the Jabberwockies from season 1. Anybody remember that?
Yes.
I feel like Joel is like in position to like do one of their moves. Anyway, Jabberwocky, that was a good show in my opinion.
They're in Vegas now.
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah, they've been there for a while.
Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get an update on Joel.
You know what this means, by the way? Joel's not here. Joel has the number 1 pick. He forfeits the pick. It is now my pick being second on the clock, so I will take over.
I mean, if he doesn't get back soon, I mean, David, can we pull up the board and we can put him on the clock? Maybe we'll give him Adam Svensson, who withdrew. So that would only be fitting, I think.
I think that would be fair, yeah. Just touching on the course analysis, which, from speeds, like, I mean, where else in the industry are you getting anything like that from Spence? But I completely agree with basically everything he said. Big uptick and around the green for me. Driving accuracy, just the positional nature of the course. You can look at courses like Harbourtown, Wailea, the RSM Classic's a good guide as well. Sedgefield, Wyndham Championship, all of those sort of positional golf courses. And then just the huge increase of approach shots from 100 to 200 yards. I have 14.3 strokes on approach on average coming in that 100 to 200 yard bucket, which basically means you're only hitting 2 shots over 200 yards and 1 less than 100 yards. And so that's heavily weighted in my models this week. But I see that Joel's finished counting all of his stacks of cash and has arrived back onto the show.
Did Joel draft himself is so classic. Really good stuff from Ivan. And then Steven, of course, otherwise known as Sicily Kid, said if Tambo were here, he'd pick 6 in a row. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. All right, let's bring up the board. Let's get started.
Yeah, Joel, if you can just add the spreadsheet to the stream again down as one of your tabs, then we can bring that up and we'll get underway with the draft.
By the way,
interested to see who you might take with the first pick.
Brent is here. He says, "Hey, Sia, sorry about your Lakers. My Nuggets were just too much for y'all this year." I mean, I'm not really a Lakers fan. I just like them this year post trade deadline. I was right in the first 2 series. It was this last series where like Denver was just so much better. So that's the end of that. But okay, Joel, it's your turn, man. You ducked out. You tried to withdraw from the tournament, but we kept pulling you back in. Who's going to be your first pick overall for the Charles Schwab Challenge?
Yeah, and I'll just echo. I apologize about your Lakers, but I am excited to see LeBron on the Knicks next year. As we all know, that is the only eventual outcome. With that being said, speaking of GOATs, best players, that's obviously who I'm going to take with my first pick in this draft, which is the obvious best player, Scottie Scheffler.
Brian Harmon.
Well worth paying up for. Listen, 11.5 is pricey, and you got to think twice about putting all that money up. But the thought here, and the way the field is kind of built out, you can get one other kind of top tier guy and then kind of balance it out from there, or just go straight balance in the high 7K range for the rest of your lineup, which I'm totally okay with, because like we were saying before, there's probably not as big of a gap from the mid to high 7K range to the high 8 range as there would be in a more loaded field like at a major. So if your strategy is to take Scottie and balance it out from there, I don't think you have to dip as much as you normally would in a more loaded field. So I obviously Scottie's the best player. I'm going to go ahead and lock him in, and we'll see how the rest of the draft falls from here.
I think the other interesting thing, just when it comes to roster construction this week, it's only a 120-person tournament. It's going to be easier to make the cut. Not saying that you necessarily want to dip down in the certain ranges here, but if there are players that you like down beneath, I don't know if construction is necessarily as difficult as it would be in a 156-man field where the total cut percentage for everybody goes down a little bit.
Yeah, I also think, before we get to your pick, Spencer, I think pricing, this is the first week I can remember in a long time where I looked at some of the prices and I was like, that's wrong. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I think I would ignore, even if you leave more money on the table this time, which I'm not necessarily encouraging this tournament relative to other tournaments, or if you just skip ranges and you dip down into 6, or like, I just think, especially, 8K and below, there's a lot of guys that are kind of the same. So don't get stuck on the ranges. I say that a lot, but I want to say it for this tournament in particular, especially in the 6K range. I think there's a few guys that could be way more costly, way more expensive. So with that said, Spencer, where are you going?
I think when I built this and when I was trying to figure out what's the player that I would want to start backing, at least as the first pick here, I want somebody that can score on these long par fours. These are really difficult holes. I do want somebody with a good short game. I want the weighted tee to green. I want the weighted scoring. But above anything else, I wanted a golfer that checked that pitch and putt narrative when I added both the approach metrics and the putting metrics to this. So I'm going to go with a popular guy in the $9,000 range. I'm going to take Tommy Fleetwood at 9,200.
All right. I don't have a problem with Tommy Fleetwood. I mean, I think he is certainly a good price. He wasn't somebody I immediately went to, but I mean, I think he's so well-rounded. I think it's a good play. David, I want to get your opinion before you pick your pick on Tommy Fleetwood. I mean, the sort of disclaimer I always want to start the show with is we can't like everybody. Like, that doesn't make any sense. We wouldn't be doing our jobs if we liked everybody. So I'm curious, David, in terms of Tommy Fleetwood, whether you like him or not, is he somebody that would be in your player pool?
He'll definitely be in my player pool. I mean, he's coming off just a very, very good run of golf. Like, Tommy Fleetwood has been sneakily very, very good recently. I mean, 18th at the PGA Championship last week, and I personally don't feel that Oak Hill was the best course set up for a Tommy Fleetwood with the way that his game rounds out. Before that, 5th at Quail Hollow, another big boy golf course, and then 15th at the elevated event at Arbussy Heritage. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I see that as an event that's very, very correlated to success around here. So he's coming in great form, and he looks very, very close to the win. So don't mind the play at all. I thought that the way that Spence was shaping that he was about to take this guy. And I want to throw a cat amongst the pigeons, basically, to start off, as I sometimes like to do with my first pick, and kind of ignore the top of the board and go get some value further down the board for me. And for me, that's Cameron Davis. I mean, this is, for me, a course where the biggest thing for me with Cam Davis is he is not going to pop in your models. He's not going to pop for your metrics that everyone's plugging in. Everyone's getting kind of the same names. Cam Davis performs on short golf courses. It's just a fact. He loves like Arbussy Heritage. His record there is immaculate. He's played very, very well here. He's just finished 4th at Oak Hill. And he's the kind of guy that if you don't have that residual knowledge of he's very, very good at these courses and outperforms all the statistics, we think of him as this bomber, and he just manages to find fairways, that I feel that you can get an edge here just with some knowledge. He's not going to pop in your model.
Can I add one thing to that very quickly before we move on? So surprisingly, and I don't know if we would call this popping, he's 12th overall for me here, inside the top 5 for weighted tee to green. And then really it's the answer that David talked about, where you put him on these short courses and then all of a sudden he becomes like a legitimate top 10 option in these fields. So yeah, I think statistically there's going to be things that will probably bring him down in a lot of ways, but if you run it from a current form perspective, if you run it from weighted tee to green, if you look at these short courses and you add some of these things on from the back end of this, I think it's very easily you can move him into a top 15 player into this tournament, and you can probably push him higher than that. Like, I'm sure you can speak of this yourself, David. Like, he opened I saw him at some books in like the 70s, and now he's down into the 30s. So there's definitely credible money that is backing him, and the move seems to be sharp money and not square money that I've seen that's moving it. So that's always a noteworthy thing to at least keep in the back of your head.
Yeah, Cam Davis makes a lot of sense. I think from an ownership standpoint, he makes so much sense that, like, listen, like where we're at in a lot of the tournaments we're playing, like there's a lot of sharp people. And when I say we, I don't mean us four. I mean the people in the audience too, because I see Cam Davis is picking up a lot of ownership. So that would be the only watch out, that in the mid 8K range, he's going to be the highest owned guy, him or Ricky Fowler. I think they're kind of teetering back and forth there, but it is quite a bit of ownership. So it's just something to keep in mind. I mean, as good as a course fit as he is, from a DFS standpoint, you do at least have to consider his ownership. I got to say, though, I love to see audience start. We have picked Justin Rose, who's going to win this tournament, and Taylor Moore, who might top 5 this tournament. I love both of these. I love the salaries for both of these. Neither of them are going to be like prohibitively high from an ownership standpoint. I'm saying pretty low numbers for Taylor Moore, and for Justin Rose, it's a pretty aggressive number. It's in the 17% range. So that one is a little high, but I like it anyway. I absolutely think he has win equity here. I love both of their games. Okay, first of all, real quick, Justin Rose has won here before. He won in 2018, third place in 2020. In 2023, he already has a win, AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. And in, let's say, the 3 biggest tournaments so far, the Masters, the PGA Championship, and what am I forgetting? The Players. His finishes are 2 inside the top 10 and 1 inside the top 20. The guy's on fire, and this is a great course fit. We know that because he won, but it's also a great course fit. The ball striking is there, and the putter. Last 24 rounds, he's fifth in this field in the putting metric. And by the way, Taylor Moore, he's third. So Taylor Moore's another guy that's ball striking it and has been hot with the putter last 24 rounds. So I love both of these guys. Joel, I want to go to you. Are both of these guys in your player pool? Have they been overlooked by you? Where are you at with Taylor Moore and Justin Rose?
So I'll start with Taylor Moore. I really like Taylor Moore, and he's definitely in my player pool. We're playing a lot of him. In that price range, there's a lot of guys you could play. I like the method of taking Scotty and balancing it out with a bunch of guys in that range. Rose I like too. For all the reasons you said, there's a lot to like about Rose. The challenge for me with Rose this week is his price. And that, if I do want to play Scotty and then you put Rose too, it does make it difficult. Then you do have to dip lower to balance out your roster.
Yeah, that's fair. Spencer, yes or no on Taylor Moore?
I don't know. I don't dislike Taylor Moore. I think there's players priced next to him that I would prefer to play. So he might get bumped out of a player pool based off of that answer. But I mean, you have to like the ownership from what he's presented in 2023. And I see sub 7% right now. And it's hard to he's 30th in my model, which is probably lower than an answer that somebody would expect me to give from where he's ranked in some of these past tournaments. So there's just a couple players that I like a little bit more, which maybe we'll talk about at some point, but I guess indifferent would be the best way to say it with players that I like a little bit. And
Justin Rose, yes or no, Spencer?
I kind of give the same, but he's fifth in my model. I don't know. I prefer Tommy Fleetwood if I'm directly comparing, and we can't play everybody, but that's to me, that's the one difference, Sia, that I would give. And I don't want to give too long of an answer here, that I would give. I would be curious. And I mean, I guess from for the show, if you don't want to say, that's fine, but I would be curious to what players you thought were mispriced on the board. Because is it at the top? Because I kind of think the players at the top are more or less accurate.
Yeah, it's more like the 6K range. I think there's a few guys that are mispriced.
Fair.
And in the 7K range. So it's really not at the top necessarily.
I think that's a fair answer. To me, the players $8,000 and up, whichever way you want to put them, they're all top 30 plays for me. And that's what makes this really difficult, is we can't play everybody. And I don't have any players. When I wrote my article this week, there wasn't one name in that section that I said, this is a fade for me. This is somebody I'm looking to take on in matchups. All those answers came in the $6,000 range, where I either thought a player was massively undervalued or massively, I don't know if you can be overvalued as a high $6,000 golfer, but I thought it was a player that didn't necessarily belong to the player next to him. So I don't know. It's one of those spots where you have to pick and choose.
All right. Well, David, it's your pick. I'm going to box you in real quick. I want you to make your pick, but I want you to tell me what you like better. Justin Rose at 9,300 with some elevated ownership. Taylor Moore at 8,000 with looks like it's going to be 10% or lower ownership.
I'd be going Justin Rose on that. I'm gonna say something kind of controversial. I'm not sure that I love Taylor Moore this week, and I've been a big Taylor Moore guy this year. The reason why is his approach metrics. A lot of that is coming from 200 plus yards. So I've really liked him at places like Quail Hollow. That's where he's been picking up his shots. He's fourth on the PGA Tour through approach from 200 plus yards. And so I'm a little concerned where we're getting into this a lot of shots between 100 to 200 yards, whether he's got the best game given some of the ownership that I think that we're going to get. He absolutely bombed as well in the last 2 rounds of the PGA Championship. So I think that's going to take a little bit of a knock to his confidence. So I'll be playing some Taylor Moore. I'm not going to be overweight on him as a result. The counter to that is he's won the Valspar Championship. Who won this tournament last year? Sam Burns. We know what he's done around Copperhead course. And he's also got an 11th at the Argosy Heritage. So that's why I'll be playing some of him. I'm just not sure that I'm going to be overweight this week, because I feel that a lot of people have caught on to the Taylor Moore story now, and they'll be going in for him there. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah,
I don't think the ownership's going to get too elevated. I honestly think that performance, I guess it was Saturday where he threw his club or threw his driver, I actually think that's going to have ownership be down a couple of percentage points. That's just the human condition. People just generally put him in a certain box and don't want to play him when they see that for a couple of different reasons. But David, you're talking about guys you're going to be overweight on. Cameron Davis, certainly one of them. Who's the next guy?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I think people are like, I don't want anything associated with people throwing clubs. I don't stand for that, and so I'm not going to play him in my lineup as revenge or whatever. So agree with that. I'm going to take this guy. I'm amazed that he got past you, Sia, because we've talked about him already quite a bit this week. I sent Sia a message quite late at night on Twitter with just one name. It was one word, and it was Bezadenhout. And I just absolutely love him coming in here this week. Key for me is his approach between 100 to 200 yards is kind of off the chart. That's really where he scores all of his approach numbers. He missed the cut on the number last week at Oak Hill. Oak Hill is not Kristen Bezadenhout's course. So I'm really targeting a lot of these guys who have either just missed the cut at Oak Hill or somehow made the cut at Oak Hill when they really shouldn't have, because that was a huge golf course where if you're not driving it off the tee, there was no way that you were going to finish within the top 20 of that tournament. And we saw that on the leaderboard. So he performed very, very well there. Great driving accuracy, great short game as well. His approach has just turned absolutely on fire since the Players' Championship. Whether you go and get your data from, go have a look what his approach numbers have been since the Players' Championship, because he's gained multiple strokes in a big way for his last kind of 6 tournaments. So he's really popping for me. I'm happy to go back to him here as we did at the Byron Nelson.
Yeah, like you said, I like Seabass quite a bit. And for the record, he has been great on approach. He was 15th here last year, and I went back to look how he did it. And he did it in the way that you would think he would have done it, which I like to see, right? He did it with the putter, and he did it with the approach. And that's exactly where he's hot right now. For the record, he gave a little bit back around the green last year at Colonial, but that's the recipe. He knows the recipe, and he's coming in hot with that recipe. So I like it, Joel. I'm going to go to you before we get to Spencer's pick. This is just a yes or no. Seabass at 7,700. Yes or no?
Absolutely. I was going to take him next.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Spencer, you got Fleetwood. Let us know if you like Seabass or not, but I'm more interested in your second pick.
So yes to Bezadenhout, and I am going to go with an answer that David was talking about when we talk about some of this proximity. And that's one of the things with Taylor Moore that pushed him down my model. Most of what he does comes from distance. He doesn't get that there. He decreases from weighted proximity. There's a golfer here in the 8,000s for me that does not do his work from deep. It's a golfer that finds a lot of fairways. He wants a short course. Unfortunately, and Sia, this feels like a golfer that would be right in your wheelhouse of the Kyle Stanley sort of mold. He's 120. He's 120th in my mold out of 120 players in weighted putting from 10 plus feet this for this tournament. I'm going to take Russell Henley though as the number 1 accuracy player. I
thought you were going somewhere else, by the way. I thought you were going to. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but okay, go ahead. Sorry, Russell Henley.
I would be curious to hear where you thought I was going with that, but I don't know. It comes down to a total driving number. It comes down to the weighted scoring of him being inside the top 10. It comes down to a bogey avoidance answer. I have a very specific way that I'm trying to build lineups this week. And it's kind of, it doesn't necessarily have to be the 2 players that I started with, but I kind of like in this general range that I'm in right now, mixing and matching, because I think there's a lot of hidden win equity with some of these names here that might be a little bit under the radar. I know Henley has gained some traction, and it's kind of one of the answers that I gave yesterday. Like when I wrote my article, I think Fowler was 18% and Henley was like 8%. And the exact answer I gave is, to me, they are pretty much the same player if you remove ownership from the equation, but then you add ownership and all of a sudden you're creating leverage with Russell Henley. That answer has changed over the last 24 hours. So now Henley's about 13.5%, Fowler 16%. I think you can kind of pick and choose who you like in that spot once the ownership gets that close. But until this creeps up further, Henley is a top 10 player for me. And I don't think most people would say that.
So here's the thing about Henley. One thing is, Spencer, to your credit, I think markets are really respecting him. I noticed it was either on FanDuel, I think it was FanDuel or DraftKings. He was a favorite against Justin Rose, which really surprised me. He's minus 118 versus Justin Rose is minus 108. And I hammered the Justin Rose part of that. I put it out on a show earlier today. I'm going to put it in the Win Daily Discord with all of my other bets as well, including outrights, first round leaders, top 20s, top 40s, all that. Stay tuned in Win Daily for that. But I don't want to take somebody that's bad at putting. And for the record, I see in the chat, there's somebody that the chat seems to like. Just check his putting numbers, particularly the last 12 tournaments. That would be nice. So maybe we don't want to take that guy. I don't know, just a thought. But I'm trying to avoid that because I really want to hone in. I don't have to have like great putters necessarily, but I really want to hone in on not taking the bad putters here. That's not a concern of yours.
Yes, it's a concern, but I guess the answer I would give to that, at least as a pivot away from it, is these are really pure bent grass greens. And I think when you get really pure surfaces, it either helps the really good putters already or the putters that are not so great. And if you're telling me that there's a possibility that Henley can just be adequate with the flat stick, I think he can compete. If all of a sudden he does something abnormal and he starts making putts, I think he can win this tournament. So I almost think that the ease here helps him just like it would help one of your great putters that you want to talk about.
Fair enough. All right. Joel, it's your pick. You got back-to-back picks. We're only in the second round, so let's try to race through round 3 and just try to get back on some solid schedules. You got 2 picks, Joel. Who's it going to be after Scotty, the big gun?
All right. I got to bounce my lineup here. I will say a couple of the value plays I wanted did go here, especially Seabaz. So the next guy I wanted, same price, was Emiliano Grillo. Got a good course history here. He's been ball striking especially the last 2 tournaments, has been astronomical. It does feel like a really course fit. So under 8K, I think I would have been happy with Grillo in the 8K range. So to still get him under, I feel like I'm getting really good value with him on this pick. And then I'm going to also take with my second pick here. I'm really torn between 2 guys, but I'm going to stick with Nate Lashley. And the reason I went with him is because 6,900 for Nate Lashley just seems like really good. I mean, to get him in the 6K range is a super good price. And it really helps my salary relief here with Scheffler. And, the easy answer also is in his last 2 tournaments, both in May, he gained over 6 strokes on approach. So he's got some question marks to be answered with his driver, but this course should be forgiving on the driver. If he strikes the ball and approach that well again, he should have a really good result.
If you look at the 7,100 range and you go down to, 6,800, 6,700, there's some names there, man. There's some names that you could put here at like 7,400 and nobody would say, oh, that guy's overpriced. And I think Nate Lashley is in that conversation. I like your Grillo pick as well. David, before we get to Spencer's pick, a yes or no on these 2 guys, Grillo, Nate Lashley.
Grillo, yes, especially, he's gained putting 5 in a row, and we know that's his issue, right? So he looks to have maybe found a bit of something. So I quite like that play. Lashley looks really sharp as well. His approach numbers last 2 have been very, very good. 7th at the Sony Open at Waialae this year as well.
Yeah, his finishing positions just over his last 4 have been pretty great. 32nd in 2021, missed cut in 2022. Might be some value there with Lashley. Spencer, you got Tommy Fleetwood. You got Russell Henley. Who's next?
I'm going to go with a popular golfer, which is always a dangerous thing to say in this lower $7,000 section. I'm going a little bit against my model in some spots. I'm going for it when we look from a safety perspective. So this is a golfer that has made 4 consecutive cuts. He is one of the best off the tee players, which is not necessarily the answer that you want to give here, where I think some of that gets mitigated. But he graded inside the top 25 for me when I ran this from an overall standpoint. He was inside the top 20 when I ran it for safety. I think it's a really good price tag here at 7,300. So I'm going to take Hayden Buckley.
Oh, I love that pick so much. The one thing about Buckley, and it might not matter, is the around the green play. You might have mentioned that, Spencer, but that's like the only thing that doesn't look like bright green with him. The ball striking is there. The putting is there. Honestly, if the ball striking is what we think it can be, right, Spencer, maybe he won't need the around the green play too much. I think Buckley is a great call. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Spencer, but David, I want to ask you, did you notice Buckley? Is he somebody that you like this week?
Yeah, I do like him quite a bit, especially some of his correlated form. 5th at the RBC Heritage this year, an elevated event. 2nd at Waialae, pushed Siwu there for quite a lot of that tournament. And his around the green isn't like dreadful. It's like just below PGA Tour average, and I think that's workable given the approach metrics, the combined off the tee that we see from him.
Yeah, totally fair. David, it's your pick. You got Seabez, who everybody seems to like. You got Cameron Davis, who everybody seems to like. By everybody, I mean everybody on this show and in the chat. Who's next?
Well, it would have been Russell Henley, but Spencer rudely snatched him from me. He's one of my favorite players this week. You look at the tournaments he's won: the Sony Open, Waialae again, PGA National, positional, Treeline Golf Course, the Houston Open in Texas, and then El Camaleon, another driving accuracy heavy golf course. So really, really love that play. I'm going to go down that driving accuracy route again with another winner of El Camaleon. He's got very, very good history here, 3rd and 8th in his last 2 appearances is Brendan Todd. He can putt the ball, driving actually excellent. The one thing that really pops for me with Brendan Todd is miscut at Oak Hill, whatever. That is not his golf course. But the week before that, he was 8th at Quail Hollow. Brendan Todd in an elevated event at Quail Hollow, like this really strong driving golf course, like that for me is like, that's interesting. I want to look a bit more into that. And he just really pops in the approach numbers as well. So I think he's a very, very good chance of this tournament. I expect a top 20 from him, and at 7,800, that's great value.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that like Todd. Now, the one thing I recall about Todd is the recent form, and I don't know if you addressed this. The recent form with him isn't very good. Is that correct?
No, I think it's good. I mean, Oak Hill, missed cut, whatever, like not his golf course. He wasn't like miles away from making the cut, to be fair. He's short off the tee. He's never going to be able to beat Oak Hill. But then Quail Hollow before that, he was 8th.
In fairness, I might be confusing him with somebody else. I didn't even bother to look it up. But with all that, it's the ball striking numbers. I'm looking at it now. They're not great. I mean, the short game is awesome with Brendan Todd, and that's going to pay huge dividends. But just to put it out there, I mean, ball striking measured events, he's lost 4 in a row, ball striking. We know that Brendan Todd on this course can be great, and he's been great on this course, but it's just something to point out at the very least. All right, see, audience, do we have to I do want to get Joel real quick. Yes or no on Brendan Todd?
Yes.
And Spencer, yes or no on Brendan Todd?
Probably yes.
Ooh, that sounded like, kind of no. Okay, but he says probably yes. Okay, so we have nominations. It looks like Carson Young has been nominated, and maybe Sung Jae as well. Or maybe did Eric Cole get nominated before Sung Jae? Can somebody, definitely Carson Young is one of them, which I love that pick. I think he's one of the guys that's definitely mispriced. I mean, yes, he can miss the cut, but he should be 7,200 at this point in his career, at least as far as what I've seen over the last 5 or 6 tournaments that he's played. Even the ones that he's missed the cut on the number. So I like Carson Young there. Do we know if it's Young and Cole? Okay, Eric Cole instead of Sung Jae. All right, that gives us plenty of room to maneuver. I like both of these guys. I might be overdoing it on Carson Young, but I don't think his ownership is going to get out of control because he's only 6,300. People tend to just be afraid to go down there. Let me ask you, Spencer, do you agree with me that Carson Young's mispriced here? I mean, we talked about mispricing before. Do you agree with me that maybe he should be like 6,800, 6,900?
I can tell you what my model thinks he should be.
Here we go.
6,600.
Okay. So, all right. So model aside, Joel, let me ask you, and I'm not trying to convince anybody. You think he's mispriced, or do you think we're just kind of glomming onto a guy that's going to come and go like a Hank Lebioda type, and he's going to miss like 7 cuts in a row and be gone?
I think mispriced is the wrong word. I think for a guy in this price range, he has a lot of upside. And I think there is a world where he can realize that upside and he's worth playing. But there's also a very real world where he can miss the cut, right? Because he's just not had some of that consistency. So not mispriced, but I definitely think he's a good upside golfer for that price tag.
David, we saw what he did at the U.S. Open qualifier just a couple of days ago. No, yesterday, I guess, where he shot, what was it, a 63 and a 62, something insane. I mean, not that that's why I would base the great Carson Young pick on that, but add that to everything else we've seen. What's your thought on whether 6,300 is just the wrong price for Carson Young?
I think he's definitely mispriced. I would have put him in the high 6K range. As you said, the 2 US Open qualifying rounds are absolutely insane. RBC Heritage, he was 19th in an elevated event. Carson Young, I mean, again, profiles very, very well for here. What I would say is that I have him at like 7.5% ownership at the moment. So I do think that a lot of people have identified that. Do we want to play a guy who's 6,300 who's getting 7.5% ownership? That would be the only question. I'll certainly be sprinkling some of them in, but I'm not going to be like 20% Carson Young because I don't think that's the right way to go.
Yeah, and honestly, I saw a lower number, but the lower number didn't make any sense because I know everybody's kind of figured out the Carson Young thing at this point. We've been playing him. We've been talking about him for over a month. So at this point, people are kind of, they've scrolled down and they see that. So I totally get that. Real quick on Eric Cole, I like the pick. Weighted tee to green looks really good for him. Finishing positions, last 4 tournaments, if you look at the strokes gain metrics, they all look really good for him. So I like our team so far. We got plenty of money to throw around for our next 2 picks. But David, it's your pick now. You got Cameron Davis, Seabez, and Brendan Todd. Who's next?
Yeah, I'm going to have to vary my build a little bit now that I've missed out on Henley. But there's another guy in that range that I was going to hopefully draft alongside him, which for me was Denny McCarthy. Makes putts Denny. I mean, we've got to love him here. His form is phenomenal. I'm going to say it's phenomenal. 29th at the PGA Championship, Denny McCarthy. He's not long off the tee. He gained a ton of the strokes on approach. Before that, 8th at Quail Hollow, 11th at Zurich, 25th elevated event at the RBC Heritage, 19th at the Valspar, pretty well correlated to here, and 13th at the Players Championship. Like, Denny is in just absolutely fantastic form. I don't think people are high enough on him. The approach game's really turned around. We know what he does with the putter, but the approach game is really, really improved. As of really Pebble Beach back in February, he's gaining a lot. So really love him here. I think that he's going to go very, very close. I think he may even win it.
I totally agree. And you guys are going to see it in the WinDaily Sports Discord. He is one of my outrights. He's, I think, and I'll just give that one away now, but he's 55-1, I believe, in most markets. And I love David, everything you just said, I totally agree with. I love the recent form. I think he's kind of hidden in DFS. I mean, a pivot off of Cameron Davis is Denny McCarthy, or you could just play both because you're going to get leverage from Denny McCarthy anyway. And that's probably not going to be a common build to get Denny and Cameron Davis in your lineup if that's how you want to play it. Certainly that's how David has chosen to play it. Spencer, yes or no on Denny?
Yes. And it's usually no on Denny. I never play him, and I like him this week.
Yeah, I'm in your camp. Joel, what about you?
Yes.
All right. Well, we all agree. Spencer, Buckley, I just love that pick. Again, all these low 7K picks, let's just level set. Like, those can all crash and burn. So me saying I love it really is saying I think Buckley has tremendous upside. I think Buckley is the type of guy that on Saturday and Sunday, and obviously, Spencer, you agree, can do a ton of damage. But do you have another player that can do a ton of damage after Buckley?
I have a player that can do a lot of damage to himself and maybe withdraw from the tournament.
Brian Harman.
Jordan Spieth.
Oh, nice. I like that pick. Go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, look, there's a lot of ownership around him. I understand that, but you throw him in Texas, we look at what he's done at this tournament. I mean, it's 4 straight top 10 finishes here in the last 4 years. He's one of the biggest increases that I have in my model when looking at weighted proximity versus his projected proximity on any course. Like, that's something that means a lot to me. And then all of a sudden you throw the putter in, which can be highly volatile at this point of his career, but he's still within the top 20 of my model in this pitch and putt narrative that I'm running. So I think Spieth can withdraw, yes, but I also think he has a realistic chance to win this tournament. We see that with the pricing. Like, there's markets out there where I've seen him sub 10-1. I mean, he's about a 10 to 12-1 golfer, no matter where you're looking at this. And I am kind of okay with the ownership in this section here. And I think that's one of the reasons, just to go back to it, I understand it's a $600 difference, why I gave a hesitant answer to some extent on Justin Rose, just because I keep continuing finding myself pushing up to Jordan Spieth when I get the possibility in this spot, which has removed some of the ownership that I've been wanting to play on Justin Rose. So a lot of times these answers when players are so close are not necessarily, I hate this player and they shouldn't be played. It's just with my particular construction of how I've put this together, it's really hard for me to play Spieth and Rose together in a build.
Yeah, makes sense. I like the pick. And honestly, I don't think the injury, I was talking to Greg Ducharme about this yesterday on the first cut. And, we both kind of speculated, and it's truly speculation, that maybe his withdrawal from the Byron Nelson because of a quote, air quotes, wrist injury, maybe that was him just trying to appease his sponsor at the Byron Nelson and pretend that he had an injury and he just really didn't want to play that tournament. He wanted to gear up for the PGA Championship because he didn't look injured last week at the major. So I think you're probably totally fine with Jordan Spieth. I'm surprised he's gotten as much ownership as he has because I thought people would be afraid of that injury, but whatever. I think he's obviously a great pick. This is a course he absolutely dominates. Joel, you've got back-to-back picks, Scotty, Grillo, Nate Lashley. Where are we going next?
All right. So I will say I was planning on taking Spieth there too, which is now probably a good thing because if I took him, he 100% was withdrawing. So I'm happy that I got out of that one. I'm reshaping how I'm making this build. So I'm going to start off here. I'm going to pivot to Ricky Fowler. I'll say he does look a little popular this week for my likings, but to get another guy at 8,900, again, under 9K, this certainly feels like a week where I think he has the upside to go out and win the tournament. I mean, the way he's been playing this year, the way the consistency with his ball striking around the green, he even popped with his putter often this year. there's a lot to like about Fowler at under 9K. I think there's a ton of upside here with him. And with the next pick, I'm going to go into more value. I'm going to take Ryan Palmer, who over the course of Ryan Palmer's career, we've seen him. He tends to like pop in spurts where he goes on a little run and has a few tournaments in a row where he shows really well. I'm thinking that we might be in the middle of that run now. He's been really good the last 2 tournaments. It's back in Texas where he likes to play. At 7,200, this could be another good spot for him.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to come around to Ryan Palmer, and it's only because I like so many other guys in that low 7K range, but I don't have a problem with him at all. And Ricky makes a lot of sense. David, real quick before we get to Spencer's pick, Ricky and Palmer, in or out?
In on both. I think Fowler hurt a lot of people's feelings last week, and that always results in a bit of a decrease in ownership. And if we, he gained strokes and he missed the cut. It's just unfortunate when stuff like that happens. He gained strokes on the field and missed the cut on the number. Palmer loves Texas as well, and we were on him very, very recently at the AT&T in Byron Nelson. We had tipped him up at 150 to 1. And he was leading the tournament, entering the final round, eventually finished 8th, but we know that he loves playing in Texas. It means a lot to him, and he's a decent play here. He's had a 6 here before as well.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Spencer, who comes after Jordan Spieth?
So there are 5. So I ran 6 categories. I'll start by saying this. And there were 5 players in this tournament that had more top 10s inside of my model than this player here. I cannot believe he's made it this far to me. You can say that this is where I have thrown my lineup down the drain at this point. I am going Brian Harman.
What? Oh my dear Lord. All right. I'm surprised Joel didn't take him before you did, but go on, Spencer. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Couple answers for why I like this. He hits a lot of greens in regulation. He's going to be inside the top 10 of most models when you run this from total driving. The bogey avoidance is 3rd. The short courses are 3rd. I think the key to this whole thing, though, and I've given this answer a couple times this week, I'm not a course history person. I always come on every single show and say I don't buy the course history narrative because while it could be true, once somebody knows about it or once the public knows about it, it kind of pushes you into this territory where you get 20% owned golfers and you're paying in for that baked in value of what's going on there. Harman has amazing course history. I see sub 7.5% right now. Like, it's almost like we've gone too far in the other direction of what we've seen from him recently, pushing him down the board. I actually think 8,200 is a really good price. I do think he's a legitimate player in this tournament that can give you a top 10 or 20 finish. We can look at what he's done here recently, and it kind of goes back to the stats that I just talked about. Look, it's burned me a million times doing this. At some point, it has to work. I like it when it's going to be sub 7% versus some of those like 20% chances I took on him.
At some point, it does not have to work, but my opinion doesn't matter here. The authority on Brian Harman is, of course, the person who always drafts him and subsequently watches him withdraw 2 days later. Joel, are you in or out on Brian Harman?
I do like Brian Harman. I normally play him. I am out, though. And I think, Spence, you made some good points, but the recent form is just not there. And, I just think I got to see more from him coming around than playing good golf before I can last him.
Ouch. Burn. Man, rivalry. Forget that Tambo thing with Spencer. Now it's Joel and Spencer cooking things up here. David, what are you cooking up with your 5th pick?
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at how much money the audience has got, and I was sort of considering which way I go, and I think I've got to take this guy now, go spend up some of my salary, and I think I'm going to get a little bit of an ownership gap on Colin Morikawa. I feel that a lot of people are going to be obviously going up to Scheffler. That's a no-brainer. But, going to a Victor Hovland, who's in excellent form, going down to a Jordan Spieth, for example. And I think Morikawa kind of gets missed a little bit in there. I mean, his performance at the PGA Championship, for me, 26 on a course that's really too long for him, was really, really promising. He's gaining putting a lot on bent grass lately. Gained at the Masters when he finished 10th again. That's probably not a course that fits Morikawa all that well. Obviously, we know what he can do in approach, but he's highly accurate. He can find fairways, which for me, on a positional golf course like this, is very, very promising. He's also finished 2nd here in 2020, so I love that he's got some good recent form, good comp courses at RBC Heritage and Sony Open as well. And I think he gets missed a little bit, but he certainly gives me a lot of winning upside in this lineup.
All right. I think it's a great leverage play. I'm probably not going to end up playing him. I'll find my leverage in other places, including some lineups where I just fade Scotty Scheffler, for example, and some of the chalky guys in the 9K range. But Spencer, Colin Morikawa, yes or no?
I think the reasoning that David talked about of trying to create leverage makes a lot of sense. For me, I'm probably more inclined to want to do it with Max Homa, who's a golfer that I have not been on recently, but I do think this is a really good course setup for him. I don't know. Like, it kind of goes back to the answer I keep saying, though. Every single person, $10,000 or over, is inside the top 6 of my model. It's you're splitting hairs here at the end of the day. And if you think you can create some sort of either it's a discount or a leverage discount with it, like, you have to get different in some spots.
Yeah, I hear you. And now we have a debate with the audience here. I see. Here's the thing. I don't know if anybody's officially been nominated because we have 9,600 left. I just want to say, if we wanted to spend all our money, then we could just do it with Burns and Sungjae, who I think both are like really good candidates to win this tournament. And it gives us kind of the perfect 50K lineup. Not that we have to have that. I just thought it was maybe a good way to go because I know the audience liked Sungjae earlier. And I think Sam Burns is kind of hit or miss, but obviously won last year, and the ball striking metrics and putting are what we want to see. So what has the audience decided as I try to extend my rant to see where we're at here?
See, I'll add one thing to that. I believe you and I both last year hit Sam Burns from an in-tournament ad.
Yeah. Oh, that was the 80-1. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot that this was this tournament.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That, and okay, that's good. That's coming on the heels of the 46-1 with Brooks Koepka last week, and we've got Joel who hit for 150K. So it only makes sense for this to come full circle with Spencer's live outright and my live outright of Sam Burns at this tournament last year. I think Sungjae and Burns is the play. Jimmy agrees, and it looks like I want to make sure we didn't violate any rules. Is everybody cool with that? I don't really know how the nominations bore out here. But it looks like Jimmy is saying Sungjae and Burns were the nominations. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes. No. All right. That's what it is. Listen, obviously I like both of these guys. Sungjae and Burns were the two guys that completely blew up, if memory serves, just last week. David, Joel, let me ask you, does that have any effect on how you are evaluating players for this tournament? Because they both were like really bad for a day. Any impact whatsoever?
No, if anything, there's almost a positive to it because it's going to make the ownership probably go down a little bit. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, that course was playing so challenging that like the blow up was almost like if you weren't playing well, it was almost like you're going to go into a blow up opposed to just like on a regular course that may have been just like a 1 or 2 over day. So I don't think you can hold a blow up on that course that was playing so difficult against somebody this week.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. David, let's get your final pick. But if you want to drop some thoughts on either Sungjae Im or Sam Burns, feel free. I think from an ownership standpoint, this looks pretty good because Sungjae's getting a lot of ownership. But Sam Burns, unless I'm seeing this wrong, and of course, in WinDaily Sports Discord and on the website, we're going to have the actual ownership article tomorrow late afternoon. I'm really going to be curious to see Sam Burns' number because he looks like he's sub 10% right now, which I think is very interesting. But we're offsetting the Sungjae ownership with Sam Burns, and we don't have, Taylor Moore is not super popular either. Eric Cole's probably not going to carry too much ownership. So I think this is a great lineup. But David, it's your pick. Any thoughts on the two guys that the C audience just took?
Yeah, I think Sam Burns is interesting from a leverage perspective. If we look at his win here, obviously, but then a win at Austin Country Club as well. Again, Pete Dye design, but a positional kind of golf course where power is not the be all and end all. Sorry. 15th at the RBC Heritage as well. I thought was very, very good for him. Sungjae In, again, very, very interesting in terms of 7th at the RBC Heritage this year, 15th here last year as well. I'm not sure that I'm going to get there. Like, he was so bad last week. He missed the cut by quite some number at a course that I really think should have suited him. So we can put that down to he traveled in from South Korea like 4 days before the major, and that probably wasn't the best decision in hindsight for him. So a little bit interesting. All right, so for me, 6,800 left, and amazed that this guy's on the board when C is in a draft because this may be Cia's favorite golfer in the entire world. Is Ben Martin. Love the approach metrics that we've been seeing from Ben Martin as of late. Very, very talented golfer. Driving actually has been very good as well. Again, missed the cut at the Wells Fargo. That's not a Ben Martin golf course. Like Quail Hollow, you need to be driving it a hell of a lot more than Ben Martin does. And I'd rather take the improved form that we've been seeing from him. Never missed a cut here, and he's had a 10th year before. Third at the RBC Heritage previously, 7th at Wildlife. So a lot of those concourses, he's ticking the boxes for me. And I just think that we've, over this last year, seen a very, very different golfer from Ben Martin than we've been previously used to. So I like him here quite a bit.
Yeah, I like that pick. And he's one of those guys in that like 6,700 to 7,100 range where there's just so many guys that I think you could put at 73, 7,400 and it would make complete sense. Let's move along. Spencer, if you have any comments about Ben Martin, please share them. But otherwise, let's see where you're going with your final pick.
I think David probably took the best choice that he could make with the money he had left. Like my model really likes Martin this week. I think from a win equity standpoint, most numbers that you're going to run, or most people that are running numbers, will give a very similar answer. It just comes down to ownership. I'm going to go with the second player, though, for me in the $6,000 section. I couldn't afford Martin for what it's worth, but I'm going to take Mark Hubbard at 6,600. I think Hubbard has flashed recently with 4 consecutive made cuts. He has this perfect made cut streak at Colonial since 2022. I kind of just think there's more optimism around him here than the public is leading you to believe with this. He's inside the top 25 in my model for weighted tee to green. That pairs really nicely with the 17th place mark that I have for him in bogey avoidance. I'm kind of just looking for a made cut and hoping to go from there. And I mean, it gets really gross fast in the $6,000 range. I do think there's about 5 to 6 players that are mispriced. Hubbard happens to be one of them. So I'm happy to get him to round out this lineup that I actually think, outside of like the Spieth injury, which I think you said at best, I'm not necessarily convinced that the injury was all that bad here. I kind of think there's some general safety with this lineup, which I feel good about.
All right. Yeah, Mark Hubbard. Joel, any thoughts on Mark Hubbard? And let us know who you're rounding out your lineup with. You got Scotty, you got Grillo, Nate Lashley, Ricky Fowler, Ryan Palmer, and
well, I will say Hubbard's one of my favorite 6K play ranges, or plays in the 6K range. You know, he has the ability to pop with his iron, so I like that pick. But I'm going to round my lineup out with, and the reason I got to take this guy is because a lot of the other guys in this range were just taken already that I would have gone to. But I like Harris English. I think he does have some upside this week. He's got a really good course history here, and I want to highlight that because the biggest thing I was looking at, he's had a couple really hot putting weekends on this course. So he likes to putt here. Again, if he has another one of those where he has those ridiculous, like gains 5 or 6, 7, 8 strokes putting and just gains a little bit on approach and around the green, which he always does, I think he can have a really good result. So at 1,700, I think there is some upside here with English.
Oh, I agree. I think English has some upside. I think he can crash and burn too, but I think he's the right guy to have in your tournament lineup from an upside standpoint. David, let's wrap it up. Let's obviously we're going to transition to first round leaders now, but any thoughts on Harris English? Because I think he's kind of a controversial guy to consider. I think if you look at the stats, you go back a long way. It doesn't look great, but it looks like maybe he's sort of found something, and he's the ball striker that we remember him to be before his injury a couple of years ago.
Yeah, for sure. I actually had him last week in the sections, and he broke a lot of people's hearts last week. I know as well, because he did look very, very obvious value going in, because we know the upside that Harris English has. You know, I mean, he won twice and made the Ryder Cup team right before his injury, and he's had a pretty rough road of it the last couple of years, but the underlying talent is undeniably there. He's had a second here as well, and the approach numbers were still good at the PGA Championship despite the nasty miscut. So, you know, I'd rather have something like that where he's still striking the ball well and just didn't get the putter going for whatever reason.
All right. Joel, are we ready to go to where we make all of our money?
Let's do it. We're not done yet. Everyone, before we do the first round leaders, give us a follow. Hit the like button. It goes a long way. We will report back with some more outrights and plays in discard as we get more updates on weather and things like that throughout the week. But for today, we have the first round leaders. We'll start with you, David. Who are you looking at in the first round leader market this week?
I've actually got 6 guys this week. I'm going full morning for the guys. I believe that's going to be where the best of the day happens. It looks to be same Friday at the moment, so it looks like pretty moderate winds, which for Texas is perhaps somewhat surprising. But I'd like to go for the morning. So my 6 guys are Chris Kirk at 45-1, plays very, very well around Colonial, and I like him in that first round leader market. Russell Henley at 50-1. Spencer's boy. I actually like Brian Harmon this week at 55-1, and I'll take the exposure in the first round leader market there. Brendan Todd at 60-1. Lucas Herbert at 60-1. I think he's got the upside to really pop. His approach numbers look good, and that's always a key marker for me with Lucas Herbert, and he can putt extremely well. And final is the Texan, Ryan Palmer, 70-1.
I love it. I love it. How about you, Spence? Who you looking at in the first round leader market?
So if you do shop around, you can find Brian Harmon at 66-1 at a specific book out there. I'm going to take Brian Harmon at 66-1, and then I'm going to take a different Texan in Jordan Spieth at 33-1.
That's a good number on Jordan Spieth.
Very, very good number. I have a few plays, a couple overlay with you guys as well. At 60-1, I like Brendan Todd and Seabass. At 50-1, I like Denny McCarthy and Kurt Kitayama. And then at the top, listen, we've seen him flashing in first rounds. He's playing great golf. Victor Hovland at 25-1. All right, see ya. Give us the gospel. Who will be the first round leader on Thursday?
All right, let me start with 3 long shots. I have 6 here, but 3 of them are a little kind of on the unrealistic end, 2 of which have triple-digit odds. So let me start there. Sam Stevens, who, if he can find the putter for a round, will be awesome. Honestly, I think he's a good DraftKings play as well. It's just the putter can kind of be an issue with Stevens. And that's the I mentioned a guy who has lost actually 11 out of the last 12 with the putter. That was Steven Yeager, the guy I was referencing earlier in the show. He's another guy that's like really great with every single metric other than the putting. So it's just a watch out. Listen, if you want to play him, that's fine, but don't be mad at him or mad at anybody when he misses the cut, because if a guy's losing 11 out of 12, he's probably going to lose again. It's just a matter of how much that hurts him. Sam Stevens is in a similar boat, not quite as bad, but I think he can do it for a round. So Stevens at 80-1. Chez Reavie. Everybody go look at what Chez Reavie is doing over the last few tournaments. He's killing it on approach. He's killing it with the putter, and he's got good history here. He's a good course fit. 110-1 makes a lot of sense for me. And then the real punt here, Chad Ramey. I mean, we've all seen it over the last like 3 or 4 tournaments. He just pops up on leaderboards like round 1 into round 2, and then he completely goes away. So at 130-1, these are the type of plays you put like $1 on, maybe $2. Like this is not a huge play. The 3 sort of plays that I think are a little bit more realistic. Again, the long shots are Stevens, Reavie, and Ramey. The realistic ones are Sam Burns at 35-1, Christian Bezuidenhout at 65-1. But, ladies and gentlemen, and I know we have some ladies in the audience too, so I'm not just saying that to say it. I saw Yamakaze in there, one of the Win Daily members, big time Frasier fan, the best sitcom of all time. Your first round leader, the guy you want to put all your money on, every dollar that you have, of course, on this guy. He's got a cool name. I referenced him in a tweet earlier today. It was a Seal song, Kiss from a Rose. It's none other than Justin Rose. He is going to be your first round leader at 35-1. You're welcome. It's only a Tuesday. I'm telling you what's going to happen on Thursday. He is your super lock, easy button, first round leader. It's so obvious.
Yeah, so if you go out and you win 150K playing DFS, you didn't put the whole thing, all of it, all 150K right on Justin Rose, and then what? Then how much more do you have? It's really just math. Very simple. It's that easy. I suggest it. And then you come back on Thursday night and you be like, hey, thank you. I'm rich because I bet all my money on Justin Rose and he was the first round leader. So
yeah,
there
you don't even need me.
You don't even need to thank you. That's how I see it. He's just giving you free wealth. So better than those guys on TikTok that all the time make you pay for it. C is giving it to you for free. So that's a wrap for tonight. Give us a follow. We'll be posting the lineups. Let us know who you think is going to win. We'll check back. We will crown a winner at the end of the week. Good luck. See, am I forgetting anything?
Well, Brent dropping lyrics from Kiss from a Rose by Seal. Did you know that when it snows, my eyes become blind something light that you something can't see. Anyway, David, speaking of free, members can still, or new members at Win Daily, they can still get a free week of Win Daily. That covers all the sports by going to WinDailySports.com and doing what?
Yeah, just jump into the link below, enter the promo code WinBig or green. You'll get 1 week free. Come see what we're about. Come see some of our picks. I mean, last week in the Discord on Sunday, we had that big showdown win, but I also dropped 5 matchup plays. They all hit at 30 to 1. So, I mean, you're getting some pretty stellar content. And if you like the product, then just $5.99 a week after then. But come give it a go. Come see what it's about. We've got an amazing Discord channel, great vibes in there. Really, really sharp plays, not just for golf, but every single sport that people play for. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Come support us. It helps us produce a heap of content and helps you fill your pockets with multiple houses if you follow Sears Play.
That's exactly right. Well, Joel, I think that's pretty much it. The only other thing that I forgot to mention, and this is totally on me, I apologize, sports.